I will call to order the Personnel Policy Curriculum Committee meeting, which was duly noticed on July 31st, 2025, through posting and notification of the press in accordance with Wisconsin 19.84. Notice is hereby given that school board members who are not members of this committee may attend this meeting so as to constitute a quorum of the Board of Education. Any such board member attendance will be for information gathering only and will not result into direct decision-making by the Board of Education at the committee meeting. I will move right on over to the safety message. I want to tell you all that I brushed up on my meeting skills because it's been a hot minute since we've all been together. So if I make a mistake, please just be really kind with me because, I feel like I'm forgetting all my stuff here. I thought since, this is always a topic that I really care about and you hear me talk about it frequently here, crosswalk safety. So I thought as we're gearing up and I'm walking every day, it's really important for everyone to understand what's involved with crosswalk safety for our safety message. Crosswalk safety involves both pedestrians and drivers understanding and following traffic rules and paying attention to their surroundings. Pedestrians should always use crosswalks, obey traffic signals, and make eye contact with drivers before crossing. Drivers should yield to pedestrians in crosswalks. I'm going to say that again. Drivers should yield to pedestrians in crosswalks. It's crazy to me how often that does not happen. Avoid distractions and be aware of pedestrians, especially when turning. Here are a few more tips for pedestrians. Use crosswalks. Always cross at marked crosswalks or intersections. Follow pedestrian signals. Walk and don't walk signs. Look left, right, and left again before stepping into the crosswalk. Look for approaching traffic. Make eye contact. Ensure that drivers see you before crossing and don't assume that they will stop. Don't text and walk. Avoid distractions like cell phones while crossing the street. Be visible. Wear bright or reflective clothing, especially at night. And here are some for drivers. Yield to pedestrians. Stop and yield the right of way to pedestrians in crosswalks. Be aware. Watch for pedestrians, especially when turning or passing. Avoid distractions. Put away cell phones and other distractions. Don't pass stopped vehicles. Don't pass a vehicle stopped at a crosswalk, as a pedestrian may be crossing at that crosswalk. And then follow speed limits. Adhere to speed limits, especially in areas with crosswalks. All right, everyone. Moving on, I need a motion to adopt the August 4th, 2025 agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right, that motion passes. Moving on to presentation 1.4. Presentation of middle and high school retake practice. Chris Medenwaltz. Welcome, Chris.
Good afternoon, everyone. We were asked to present on middle school and high school practices for our retake policy. So we have a couple of middle school and high school principals here. We met a couple times this summer to go over what current practices are, if there's anything that we would like to clean up, some of our rationale, what we've learned. The middle school folks had a retake policy that was a bit unique because it's the first time we've moved to letter grade, so they had some experiences to share. You have the presentation. I'll go through and just talk about a few things, and then we can get to questions and that sort of thing when we get there. So, just one. One of the things we've been working on as director's team is working with the Studer Group, talking about where do things fit in our strategic plan, and clearly retake practices fit into student academic excellence, and some of the values that we would like to make sure that we're encouraging with resilience and critical thinking. One of the things when we brought the principals together and we were talking about things is their feedback is this is not a topic where students and families have come and asked questions about the retake practices right now. So we tried to go through kind of where we thought maybe there were some questions or some of the things that we'd like to emphasize because they couldn't go from like, oh yeah, this is something that we're hearing a lot of, from students or families and address it that way. The why to retakes, and I'm just going to start with that just to make sure we're kind of on the same page, is really is keeping learning at its core, and we want to know what students know, and also find that balance in that we're not given unlimited time to find out what they know in a school year. And we also know that sometimes some students, if they don't understand the consequences or where the guardrails are, will find ways to maybe skirt some issues. So trying to make sure that we're also building best habits for our students. We've talked a lot at this committee and sometimes at the board level about professional learning communities. And professional learning communities is about a lot of things, but at its core is our 4 questions. And one of the questions is how do we know what students know and are able to do? And that's where retakes come in. And then the next follow-up question is, well, what do we do when they don't know something? And so finding out that information of what they don't know, and then what do we do when they don't know, and how do we respond to that? This committee has heard about AVID, and we took a great deal of people to Chicago recently to learn more about AVID. And AVID is really about shrinking the opportunity gap for students so that students have similar or equal opportunities, and making sure that we have retake practices in place. Certainly fits with that philosophy. And then finally, really just understanding that things happen beyond your first attempt in life. While there are some times where you don't get a second chance, in most places you do get a second chance. Sometimes that second chance is tough to get. Sometimes there's a lot of work to get to that second chance, but there are second chances, and making sure that we allow for retakes and have some practices in place that work for that. So we'll go through our middle school folks. This is taken directly from the grading handbook for the middle school folks. And right now we have found success in that students are allowed to on a summative 1 retake opportunity. Now, does that mean that if a student had some things going on in their life or had some things that we would never ever once allow somebody to take more than, that's not what that means. It means that in general, the practice is that, yep, you could have a retake on a summative. In order to do that, you need to make sure that the practice is done ahead of time. This is one of the things, certainly at the middle school level, but more so at the high school level, that we want to make sure that students are doing, is understanding that in order to perform well, the practice makes sense. And you have to do that. The higher the 2 scores is recorded, so we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. No matter any way you look at it, we're just going to make sure that you have the highest score possible, and it must be completed within 2 weeks of the original summative. If a student would have a summative in late September and say, oh, I'd like to do the retake, and it's now the middle of January, there just doesn't seem to be a correlation in the learning there, and it's not so much of, well, it goes with the instruction. So we put some, while the 2 weeks is probably quite honestly arbitrary, it has worked for the middle school folks of saying we'd like it to be related to when we're doing the work and when the instruction is. The long-term projects, so for the most part, the example I'll give is a long-term, maybe 2 examples. A long-term project in English might be some sort of a multi-paragraph or even a multi-page project, and they'll get feedback along the way. So that at the end, when you turn it in and say, well, I'd like to write that again. If I'm like, no, we've been writing this for 3.5 weeks, and you've gotten feedback along the way. Or possibly you haven't been writing it for the last 3.5 weeks, and now you just want to do over because you go through the process. And so there may be situations like that where teachers will have to work that out with a particular student, but that might be a time when retake practice wouldn't be followed. And the same thing with something that would be created. I can think of some welding projects where, nope, you need to redo that in order to get to the next step. You need to redo that to get to the next step, and do some things that way. That might not happen. Also performances in some of our chorus and instrumental music classes. Many of the summatives are performances, concerts and that sort of thing. It's really tough to redo a concert. So there may be some other ways that students have to do some things. The middle school level, bringing, doing extra things for extra credit, it really just inflates the grade and doesn't allow us to have an accurate representation. So that's where we're at with middle school things, and then I'll just get through everything, and then if we have questions, and if I can't answer them, hopefully one of these two gentlemen can help me out.
Chris, can you just
Yep.
explain summative assessment?
Yeah, so we talk in terms of formative and summative, and a variety of examples of that, but really formative is the practice to do the work, and summative is, hey, this is the final test. I think a few at-home examples of formative work is, whatever you're doing in the kitchen to make your meal, and the summative is when you're eating it. There's no longer an opportunity to change it. You had those opportunities when you were in the kitchen. And so formative work is really practice, is what we expect for folks to do. And all of you have had students, and I'm sure none of your children have ever done this, but some students sometimes don't want to do the practice and just want to do the summative, and that's one of the things we'll talk about at the high school level. But that's really it. Formative work is practice work, and it's a formation of learning, and we would like to respond to that, and it's one of the things we have worked pretty hard at in the last year, and we'll work at very hard this next year with our teachers, is responding to formative work. And how can we do that on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? In an ideal world, every student would knock the summative out of the park because we would have gone through a formative process to make sure that students are learning. Unfortunately, what we don't have is unlimited time. Time is our limitation in that. So, high school practices for retakes. The gist of it is, and I'm going to go through several different scenarios, is if you're doing formative work, you'll have an opportunity for a retake. The converse of that is, if you're not doing formative work, you're not guaranteed a retake. Doesn't mean you wouldn't get one, but if you really are saying, I'm not doing any homework, I'm not going to do any of the things you're asking, I'm not going to give you any opportunity to give me feedback, I just want to take the test, and if I don't do well, I want to take it again, maybe not, quite honestly. And that is one of the things, and I'll get to later on in a slide, of one of the things that I think the high school teachers have given our principals some feedback on, is making sure that the formative work is included in the practice. The expectation is that our departments follow the same practice. So while English might not look identical to math, we expect English to look the same and math to look the same. And there are some variances that need to be shared with principals, and then I'll talk about some variances with some of our courses as well, and why there's some variances there. One of the things at the high school level, last year in particular, when our teachers were coming up with their practices that they were going to follow for retakes, is really emphasizing habits. And one is students that were focused on the retake and not their first attempt. And so the example I gave is students really not doing a whole lot of the practice and a whole lot of the work, and then coming in, taking the test, saying, well, now I know what's going on. I'd like to do the retake next week. Like, well, that's really, we don't feel like we're building positive habits in doing that, and want to make sure that we're focused on kids doing the work and getting feedback along the way, so that we can make sure they do the best that they can do on that first attempt. And then if they don't and they've done the work, then making sure that there's a practice there. Students not practicing, kind of getting into that, and making sure we're building habits of the formative completion, the practicing, and we can give feedback. And then I'll talk about that on the bottom a little bit here. And then because the way that most of our grade books are set up is formative work isn't worth as much percentage-wise for your grade as summative work is, right? The final exam, the final unit test is worth more points than the formative work leading up to that. And so some students will at times play the odds of saying, well, this is worth more, so I'm just going to take that one because I don't want to do these things, and it's not worth that much anyways. And we don't feel like necessarily that's a great habit to get into, of like, well, I'll just do the things at the end. We don't think that's a great habit for post-secondary education, and certainly not a great habit in the workforce to say, well, you know what, I'll prepare for whatever I have to do, the Friday of when it's due. One of the things that we've tried to stick to at the high school level is some firm due dates. One of the things that we run into when we don't do that is some students saying, well, it's towards the end of the semester and now I want to turn in all this work. Well, I can't give you feedback on that work that was due in October when you're turning it in the end of December. So sticking with some firm due dates for some students. Retake opportunities with formative work of making sure they're doing that work and having that opportunity to do that work. And also from our teacher perspective, making sure that we are giving feedback in a timely manner. Make sure that if students are turning in formative work, that we are doing something with it, right? We're giving some feedback. We're letting students know where they're at. And then I already kind of covered the summative formative, which was really Mark's question. I will say my example we were talking about when we were talking with the principals was I used our superintendent who likes to run, and it'd be really tough to run a marathon without doing the formative work. As somebody who used to run, it's one of the things when you come to the starting line of a marathon, you know that there's a whole bunch of people here who put in the work, because you don't show up to a marathon and if you're like, yeah, I ran a mile a couple of times, right? It's just not how that works. So you gotta do the work ahead of time. So some variances at the high school level. These are some examples. There are some others. Manufacturing, I kind of gave in the project process of getting consistent feedback and then when the project is done, that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be opportunities for improvement, but there might not be an opportunity to complete, the woodworking shelf and to complete, whatever they happen to make. Family and consumer sciences, again, it's not that there aren't retake opportunities, but it might look quite a bit different when the summative is really a group project at a kitchen making something, making a meal. And if that doesn't turn out or that sort of thing of redoing that, and students who maybe miss, right, because they're ill, that would look quite a bit different as well because they're not making a complete meal on their own. Music I talked about a little bit because of performance. The same thing with art, feedback along the way of, yep, here's this part of this, here's this part of this. And then physical education, some of those summatives, again, there's a lot of physical education that's about participation and making sure you're there. So sometimes those summatives and the retake practices in FIAD looks a little bit different. And then there's all sorts of courses that we have less control over, and here's a list of some of those. Transcripted credit courses. We're following our transcripted credit courses are all through Blackhawk Technical College, and so we're following policies to make sure that we're holding on to their accreditation through that. So our retake policy follows whoever our the teacher that we're following with there. Advanced placement, similar but not the same. Certainly more leeway with us with advanced placement, advanced placement, I'm thinking advanced standing. Advanced placement are our AP courses. Again, it doesn't mean that there's never a retake possibility, but because of the pace that moves and because of having to be ready for the AP summative at the end, the early May, those might look a little different. Start College Now classes we don't teach, so it's really possible that there are no retake possibilities there, and the same with early college credit. We do not teach those classes, although those courses will go on on a student's transcript. It's certainly possible that there aren't retake practices there at all, although there might be. That depends, but we don't have control of that. As far as the practices, particularly at the high school, the two things that in talking with the high school principals is making sure that the professional learning community, so all the English departments on the same page in what they believe and what they're doing, and making sure that when we have new teachers coming in, we have some consistency with that, and empowering staff to make those decisions as a team. And then how is that communicated out? We would expect that teachers are communicating that obviously to students through their syllabus, but also having that available to families through syllabus, and if it's back to school nights and having it available there. But communicating certainly with teachers or with students about their policies and their practices and what they're doing and the opportunities for retakes. Hopefully that if there are students and would like a retake opportunity, that they're communicating directly with their teacher right off the bat of like, hey, here's what happened, here's why I didn't do well, and I would like an opportunity to improve there and go from there. So I will do my best on questions on retake practices at the middle school and high school level.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to hear this one. So I guess my biggest question is, why is there even a difference? Why is there a difference between high school language, English, and math? And why is there a difference at all between middle school and high school? When I feel like one policy could say, yep, for group project, for project kind of work, that doesn't fit. In both of them, you should have to do the formative you know what I mean? Like, why don't we just simplify it and have one that's done for both? And why would we let English do something different than math?
Yeah, I think our perspective on that was, again, I'll go back to the last slide, it was empowering teachers to feel like they were making decisions that were best for their curricular expertise in their area of like, this fits in our area. And certainly, I can understand your viewpoint from the outside looking in of like, let's just all do the same thing. And I can tell you that high school teachers would say, well, we're not the same thing when you walk down the hall. Math does look different. How they practice in math looks different than how we practice in English. So that was our rationale, was making sure that we were empowering and teachers. We have really put a lot of work and their work as professional learning communities of making decisions instructionally, making decisions based on data. So that was really where we were at with that.
Are there other questions?
Yes, I have a question. So, at what point can you take a retake? Is it you fail the test? Is it I got a 70 and I don't like that grade?
The second one.
It's I just don't like the grade.
I would like to improve,
So I got a 97. I'd like to take the test again.
100%.
Is it to the teacher's discretion at a certain point to say no to that?
Yes, I think if you were a student and what you were after is I never want to miss a point ever, a teacher might say, you know what, this will do nothing for your grade and do nothing for what you know, right? You missed one question. It's the one question you've missed in the last 4 weeks. Like, there may be a teacher say, I'm not giving you a retake for that. There's no value to anybody in that other than making both of us do a whole lot more work. So I could see that happening. That sound rational?
My other question then is back to the high school level, is what does is it up to each individual department then to decide what their percentage of their formative grade versus summative grades are?
Yeah, that's the same thing of the empowering thing of like, okay, how are we gonna look at where does formatives go, where does summatives go? We would expect as a department they're pretty close. There might be some variances, particularly in honors classes, and there may be some variances in things that aren't in the core. So I don't want to misspeak, but I would say English 10, I would say that's solid. I would say for English 12 or some of the things that we would say are electives in the core might look a little different, if that makes sense. But the core classes would be, yes, this is how much summatives are worth, this is how much formatives are worth. It's just if we talk about electives in the core, that might look different.
Okay, sorry to keep going. I have a
Nope,
lot of questions.
absolutely, ask the questions.
At the high school level, how many retakes are you allowed?
I don't know that we have that specified. I think getting beyond one would likely require quite a conversation, I think, of like, okay, tell me what didn't happen that you need to do this again. Is it possible? It's certainly possible. There could have been plenty of things that were happening in a student's life that would, I've got to do this. I don't want to say, no, we would never allow that, but I think that would be an unusual situation to do more than one retake on a summative.
Okay, and that's kind of what I think Michelle would say too. We were talking a little bit, but about the middle school is like you at one attempt.
Right.
And I think students, when that's given them as like, look, you've got one chance. I mean, to redo it, we're gonna
Yep.
give you a second chance, but I think that there's some validity to that, like
Yep.
policy being in place across the board almost. And so I think that's kind of what she meant from carrying some of the things from
Sure.
on from high school. You've trained them in middle school and they understand the process, then to have that go on in high school.
Yeah, and I know the high school folks have seen the middle school, and I think they actually like it, and there's some things that they're like, yep, that's pretty good, and quite honestly, I think, some of the things that some of the high school teams do may look a lot like the middle school now that we've seen what they've done and seen some of those things. So that will, in August, when those teams are meeting and we're making sure we're on the same page, and this is one of the things that at both Craig and Parker, they'll go through in August again. You may see some changes that look middle school-esque.
Okay, thank you. And one more thing, so are these, I know we have the learning communities where the teachers converse about, is Parker's English classes gonna have the same accountability or not accountability, same practices as Craig? How's
Those
that
will
work?
probably I won't say they'll look a lot different, but it's really tough for us to get all those people together all the time, to get and do that. And so what I'm gonna say is we expect that all the English teachers at Craig will be the same, and all the English teachers at Parker will be the same. We're not 100%, I can't guarantee right now that the English 9 classroom and every English 9 classroom and both those will be exactly the same.
4:56 p.m.
So
is it-
I have gone over, I just told me, I've gone, no.
But I have a,
Was that you?
No, it wasn't me, it was my watch.
Just letting you know. Apparently that's an important time for Mr. Krieger.
great. I just have a follow-up based on that, so that, or what you had said, but piggybacking off of what she had asked. I guess I have a little bit of an issue when you say that English 9 might have a different retake policy at Craig versus English 9 at Parker High School, because you're teaching to the same curriculum and to the state standards, and you're talking about curricular alignment, so why would that not be the same?
I would say it is the same. We had. the
You
process-
can't have something different
No,
at
no,
each,
no, no.
at high
We
school
have
for the
kids
same.
going from
Yeah.
building to building. What I'd also say is like in the English department, 35% of your grade is formative, 60% is summative, 5% is your exam. That's set in Infinite Campus for them. So there's no changing that, there's no altering of that. It was interesting because we both went through similar processes separately to talk with teachers about what will the retake policy be, what would be the criteria. We came up with the same answers when we compared. Our percentages are within 5 points in each category. We do expect in both places that they turn in their formatives in order for them to get a retake. It's required. Obviously, like Chris said, there's always an outlier situation that you obviously want to be humane for the student, but they need to turn in that work. They need to typically one retake is the plan. It's not, at one point we did have a practice where it was just keep pulling the slot machine arm till you get what you want. That's not fair and that's not appropriate. And in most cases, kids will do the one retake, they'll do the work that they need to do and put in the extra time if they need to with their teacher to get where they want to be. It's really to make sure that they're demonstrating that learning and demonstrating that knowledge. And in most cases, it's not the exact same test. We're not giving you the test again. You're doing something extra, whether it's, okay, explain the rationale of why you did this wrong, or here's another math problem similar to that I'd like you to do, or come in and talk to me and let's go through why your thinking is this way on this science lab, not this. I mean, there's different ways to get it a retake, just like there's different ways to assess kids based on their needs sometimes. That's really the thought behind that.
I actually would agree with both probably Julie and Michelle too about considering that one retake in the high school, just simply because like if kids are asking for retake after retake, I think of all the work involved on behalf of the teachers, and that's just ridiculous.
The
Sorry.
other thing I would
That's
add.
just my opinion.
No, I agree with you too, 100%, as would our teachers. The other thing I would say also is we want kids to do that retake within
5 school days. You know, this is when the learning happened, this is when the testing happened. We want to make sure that we're solidifying your thinking. If you're going to do the retake, we're going to do what we need to do to get you there, and then we're going to make sure you have that.
And in like sciences and math, if you don't learn what you learned in the last chapter, you can't do the next chapter. So therefore, you're holding the teacher back, and everyone else it makes it harder on the teacher, correct?
It's very inefficient for someone to come in days or weeks later and say, I want to retake this. And when we had a more forgiving policy, very few kids did that. Most of the time, they want to do it within a couple of days too, because they want to see that grade improved, and they want to move on also.
Thank you for all of this food for thought. As I'm thinking about my kids, and I've been through it all now here because I have a graduate, so I've seen it all. It's very exciting to be able to say that. I am reflecting on their experiences, and when there has been, I guess, not a very clear protocol or process for how to obtain that retake or whatever that is. So I guess what I'm saying, and I think probably more middle level because it sets the stage for what to expect later, is I hope, and I would love to see it be a very clear expectation or guideline set out for students. So like, okay, kids maybe know they can take a retake, but what do they do? How do they do that? What does that look like? What's the timeline? Do they have a ticket that they turn in to the teacher so that the teacher sees and it's documented? Because, I know there are sometimes students will say, well, can I retake this? Yes.
Right.
And that's the end of the conversation. And I would imagine for some students, particularly at the middle level, they need a lot more guidance and support to understand what their next step is.
Sure.
Because even saying for some kids, can I retake this? How can I improve this? That's a big step for
Right.
them to even have that conversation. And so I feel like it's great to talk about this, but how can we bridge the gap so that students actually understand clearly the dynamic of what this looks like and then their expectation and what they need to do. And I mean, truly, because I think that maybe it doesn't matter but it does matter because it sets the stage for how they fix their mistakes so that it becomes second nature and they understand, okay, this is the process I have to do. So I guess what I'm saying in that really long-winded and maybe not super clear question or comment is that I really would love and I hope that we can make this super simple, easy, clear explanation to students and families so they know exactly what the expectation is, how they can obtain, and so that with our staff, they have a really simple process too, so things aren't lost in translation along the way. Because I think that can happen. I think at the high school, it's probably more clear, like maybe there's, you say retake for this is on, you have to have it by these dates. I don't know that has been the case in the middle level for retakes. So, how we can make that really more formalized would be probably really helpful for
Sure.
everyone. And then one thing I was thinking about as we're talking about all of this is I just am curious about like best practices and like really high, we're a great school district, so I don't, but like those school districts that have, amazing test scores and great AC, a high level of success across the board. I'm so curious to know, gosh, I wonder what some of those retake policies are there. I'm sure that you all research these things from other places to get to these policies. Do you have any feedback on that at all?
You're probably not going to like my answer very much. I think my experience talking with other education leaders and principals, and when I was a principal, is that some of the places that score really high do things that you would least expect, and some of them do exactly what you'd expect. And so I would suspect if we could get accurate survey results from other districts on the retake policies, we would find some who have retake policies that say we don't actually allow retakes on summatives, and some that say we allow unlimited retakes on summatives. And I think there's a lot of other factors, and but that would be my experience, unless you two have some other colleagues you've talked to who say, no, actually, this is how it works, but.
No, I would agree. You can find anyone that will agree or disagree with all of this. One of the things that we really leaned into was John Hattie's research that does say giving kids the opportunity to retake does exponentially increase their learning. That we know, and keeping it within a pretty tight protocol also helps too.
Great, thank you. And I think we all recognize too that, like all other things, it's a work in progress, right? And as we continue and needs change, that, things change with our policies.
Absolutely.
So-
And we appreciate the feedback. It's one of the things I'll certainly share with the middle school and high school principals of, hey, when we're in August here, let's make sure we're thinking about a few of these things when we're developing syllabi and communicating with students and
Yeah.
families.
Thank you so much. This has been an ongoing topic, and we appreciate the work that everyone's put in to make this, really crystal clear.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you. All right, everyone, we're moving on to 1.5, presentation and consider moving to full boards, the student parent handbook updates. Jamie Brown, come on up.
Good to see everybody again. Yes, tonight I am here to answer any questions you have regarding the quarterly update for the parent-student handbook. In the memo, I will say that this is my first time doing this, and as I was doing it, the page numbers kept bumping as I added in the corrections. So you have received an updated thank you to Gretchen and Stacy so much for assisting me with that. But just if anybody has any questions.
Julie, Commissioner Richardson, it looked like you had something, yeah.
I was the one, I read this one like 2 days ago, so now I have to go back and find where it was, sorry.
Commissioner Herda, did you have any comments?
My only comment is this is a work of love. So I just want to thank you for it because of the fact that you were cross-referencing a lot of policies and making sure that that student handbook with all of the policies that we've gone back and forth and retired and adopted, and making sure that those hyperlinks were actually correct and that it applied to the right category or division. What a nightmare. So thank you.
I need to throw some huge kudos to those two ladies over there as they helped me and walked me through all of this. Like, I
Yeah,
just,
it's a labor of love, so
very
thank
much
you, but
appreciate it.
it's also very important that you keep everything updated, especially as we're retiring certain policies and updating them. So I know when people go and actually look at this, they want the hyperlinks to work and they want it to go to the right policy and the most updated policy, so you might not get that, thanks, but thank you.
We don't have to vote on this, do we?
You have to make a motion to move it to
Okay.
the full board.
Okay.
Make a motion for it to go to the full board.
Okay, because we can pull, if there's any question, you can always get in touch with any questions that you have, because we're not voting this in, we're just moving it on to the full board. And then, that does typically go to consent agenda, correct?
Yes.
But something, it could get pulled off of consent agenda if something needed to be just brought to light or commented on.
I think it was the meal, the changes to the meal program. I was just trying to wrap my brain around if they were actual changes or just a lot of the wording was, it doesn't look like a lot has changed. The way that, free and
So-
reduced lunches, the words are taken off of there, I guess is what, and because that's gone, it's just being changed, the verbiage, a lot of it,
Yes, the verbiage is,
the program is.
worked with Liz Liedel in Student Nutrition to kind of clean that up and get that a little bit more clear and concise.
Okay, so we have a motion to send this on to full board. Is there a second in the house? Oh, you did say second? Okay, I'm sorry. That just slid right by me. Okay, are there any comments or questions at this time? Okay, none, so we will vote. All in favor of moving to full board? Aye. The motion passes, so this gets moved on. And Jamie, I guess you can just stay right up there because the next item is presentation and consider moving to full board employee handbook updates.
Okay, yes, so the employee handbook update, we are gonna kind of start from page 1. With Carrie Mickelson coming on board, we are going to start at page 1 and work our way through. And so we did start with just the first couple pages of the employee handbook.
Were there any questions or comments on this first page? And so what is the proposed timeline? I mean, will this, it's in there.
That's what I was
Okay.
That's what I was gonna is I like how you've broken up the chunks and how you're taking it one little bit at a time and then presenting it to us and having the board approval date and the publication date. That timeline, I think seems manageable. I would ask for your insight and input based upon the capacity of your other duties as assigned.
So generally speaking, we do like to bring the employee handbook to PPC on a quarterly basis for just if there was anything that had to be updated. But yes, our goal is to do a complete review within the next year, if not a little sooner.
I think that's good just because she's new too, so we'll get a different set of eyes on it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, and it'll be interesting just to see what evolution we may find through our handbook practices over the next number of months. So are there any other comments or questions on this? I need a motion to move this to full board. Is there a motion? Commissioner Richardson motions. Is there a second? Second. Any questions, comments? There are none, so all in favor of moving to full board? Aye. The motion passes. All right, everyone. We are reaching the end of our agenda here. Are there any additional announcements or updates at this time for us? Nope. Okay, well, thank you so much for being a part of our brand new school year, 2025-2026 PPC. We have a new addition, Stacy Jordan, correct? So welcome aboard. We are looking forward to working with you. And it is always our goal to be a great committee and be shorter than finance. Right, everyone?
We're completed on the
yeah.
first one of the new year.
So,
Aggregate time is what you should be doing. Just in case, it's aggregate time.
I like that. Our planning agenda session will be next week, so if there's anything that ever you would like for us to be working in, that would be a great time because we will be planning now the agenda for September, and we typically work on kind of like a rolling month, 2 to 3 months at a time, just as we're kind of stacking things up and getting prepared for the future. Just as a reminder, this is the meeting time, the first Monday of the month, unless we have a conflict at 4:30. And I believe September, we are experiencing that conflict because of Labor Day. So that means that our meeting will be on, is it the 8th? Yes. And I believe that we have both the planning session and our committee meeting on that same day. So that will be a big, great PPC day for Commissioner Paul and all of those of us who get together at both of those times. Any questions? All right, meeting is adjourned.